And we are talking about how entrepreneurial leaders build and sustain great relationships, because relationships, that's what it's all about. We as human beings are relational, and relationships have been part of our lives forever. And in the last 2 years or so, we have found out how much people really, really need relationships in their lives, especially when they're isolated, and they've been isolated for a while. And now we are not as much. And I wanted to talk about how great entrepreneurial leaders build and sustain relationships, because it's one of their superpowers that happens for people that understand the relational part of human beings in the context of business. Now, a lot of things I'm going to talk about throughout the week really help your personal relationships. And if you've followed me for a while, you know that I always say the personal is the professional and the professional is the personal. It also plays out here even more. And we can talk about that more on another training, but I really want you to understand how key relationships are. And I'm not the first person to say that. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of training you're doing, whether you're in corporate or you have a business and you're an entrepreneur, people will tell you relationships are key to you building your business. And I totally agree with the premise. I want you to know it is 100% true. It's just that we're not quite doing it the way that it should benefit not only ourselves, but others. And it's become a little harder to connect with folks on that real human connection, because we use a lot of technology. And thank goodness for technology in the last 2 years. And we are going to see even more technology become available to us mere mortals that are not technologically inclined, but we use it all the time. I tell people all the time, I love technology. I just don't care how it works. Just show me the directions, tell me what I have to do to get the result I want, and I will love using your technology if it's what I need in the strategy of my business. But when it comes to relationships, it's really not a strategy. It's really about being relational, relational in your business, relational with your colleagues and your friends, and how that seeps over in our homes. But I really want to concentrate here on how this happens in your business and the things that maybe you should be doing more of that you're currently doing that work for you. And also for the things that you think you're doing right, but are really no longer working, because, business is changing. It's changing fast. We've gone from being in person with most events to completely virtual, to now getting out with some live events and still using virtual. And I love the combination. And there's a place and time for both now. And but we never know what the future holds. And we want to know that we can not only build our relationships, but sustain them for years to come. It's key to be able to pick up the phone or send a text message or a LinkedIn message, a direct message, and to someone that maybe for months, maybe even a year, you have not had that much contact with, but because you've developed that relationship to such a deep level, it doesn't matter. And they're there to help if you need help. They're there to give you a piece of advice if that's what you're asking for. They're there to meet with you for a few minutes, even though they may be so busy. That's the level of relationships that sustain real key entrepreneurial leaders, and they develop that at multiple levels, not just as friends, as colleagues, as mentors, as mentorees. And so it's important, no matter what level you're at, to develop relationships. And most people will tell you, well, I know that, Lorianne. I know I'm supposed to be developing relationships, and I do. and good for you. But there's some key things. If you are developing relationships, are you doing them in a way that not only sustains the other person, but sustains you? And it's a balance of both. And sometimes, like in any relationship, it's more about you sometimes, and sometimes it's all about them. And to know the nuances, to come back and forth within a relationship, it's so important. So for those of you that don't know, I've been in the people business for decades. It feels like that I've been doing it since I was little, because being the oldest of five, I was the babysitter, I was the caretaker, and there were years in our family where my mother wasn't available, and I was really pseudo mom for a long time. So developing relationships, cooperation, and how to care for people has been a real instrumental piece of who I am. And then being in sales and as a sales manager, it's all about the relationship. And we'll talk more about that during the week. And then also what I do now in helping folks to master their strategy, master their money, master their mind when it comes to building a business that not only builds it, but sustains it and has profit. So that is really what's so important. And relationships is a key component, and it's intentional for me. Some relationships, you'll meet someone and you know what, you just click, and there won't be a lot of intentional thinking around it, and you'll want to not let it go, so you put effort into it. And then there are relationships you really want to develop, the other person is not aware of that, but intentionally how to go about that, no matter where they are in their business. Some of those relationships are with clients. And even though I have clients that I have this knack for having clients for a long time. And then also they stay with me in spirit, in terms of when something comes up, they may send me a quick email. I am always glad to help them. And sometimes they come back because something new in their life happens. And also they send me family members. And so that was kind of the tradition. After my sales position, I left a big piece out of my experience. So I had a psychotherapy practice, went back to graduate school, and had part of my practice regarding couples, helping couples and folks that needed help, whether it was a mental health like depression or anxiety, or really more like coaching because they didn't know how to speak to their children or their spouse or wherever it was, that turned into a consulting business, working with leaders that were having a difficult time. Their team members weren't responding to them. We used to call them difficult leaders, but now we don't use that language. And so we're here to be helpful in every way we can. So the interesting thing, there's all kinds of levels of relationships in the entrepreneurial space, and really even in the corporate space. It just, there's some nuances, differences to that, but it's not much different. The levels of relationships are, the immediate people you're working with, the immediate people, your clients, what is that relationship? The immediate relationship with those that you are nurturing, that you want to have a conversation with, those that are here to be your clients, or those that are here to be your colleagues. And just reaching out once in a while, maintaining the nuances of the types of relationships that you really want to have in your business, because it fuels you. Now, some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, and it looks a little different, but the core of relationships are still the same. And we want you to be able to do that in a way that supports you and the other person. And, to have something that's mutual, that's sustaining for the long term. Now, there's, some relationships are short term. And so, if you are building and sustaining relationships, even though they're short term, they'll last for what you want them for and what the other person wants them for. And it doesn't make any difference. But one of the things that I see all the time is, and no matter what kind of training I've been in, what kind of training I've given, what my colleagues say, networking, everyone says it's about building relationships, but the bottom line is entrepreneurs really fall down on that. There are some key areas where they fall down consistently, and one of them is probably what I would hear from any of you, is that I'm too busy, or I forget because I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. It needs to become part of your strategy. That may not sound natural in building a relationship, but it really does need to become part of your strategy. If at the beginning of each month, you have a few people you want to stay in touch with, it's in your calendar. That is not something that's forced. That is something that you're going to reach out and say, hey, we haven't talked in a while. I did that a couple of weeks ago with someone that I've known maybe 6, 7, 8 years, maybe even longer. Knew her in a different business, she watched me go through some personal stuff, and then knew her in this space as an entrepreneur. And we just not had really talked in a long time, and spent an hour catching up. And it was really good. It was just catching up. It was not a sales call. And so a lot of times there is confusion around what kind of relationships you should be developing. And so those layers are, the networking, the events, colleagues, the sales and marketing relationships, the reaching out relationships, and the nuances of all those. And like I said, most of the times what I hear is, you know what, I just forgot. It's too busy. I want you to think about the relationships you currently have as we are going through this, and what you can do in just a short few minutes every week to shore them up. You can take 10 minutes out of your week every single week to have something in your calendar to develop relationships with folks long term. And so what happens is, what I see a lot of when it comes to relationships, I'm going to talk about a couple of nuances here, is what I call the gopher method of relationships. And it's not even really gender specific, but it's just what happens. We meet someone, we get to be friends with them, more colleagues at first, and the friendship develops because we're seeing them at the same event. So we're seeing them at conferences, we are going to some of the same things, we may be even in a coaching program together, whatever it is. And it's actually a wonderful method if all you want to do is be friends. And of course, that's around connection and conversation. And if it's just about being friends, and then that's what you continue with. But a lot of times entrepreneurial folks, go to all of these networking events and conferences and sign up for coaching programs, not just for the knowledge, but they're there to network, to get clients. And you should be doing that. And this is where the nuances come in, is as you develop friendships and relationships, what people do you keep in the friend zone? What people do you keep talking to? Because this is actually a really right fit client for me to be able to be helpful and help them in their business. And what is the relationship around just being a colleague? And so all those nuances play all the time. And what happens is, what I see a lot is, when it comes to especially networking, folks are doing two things at once. They are making connection and having conversation, and they develop the friendship, because we do that well. Most people do that well as human beings. But the intention behind that, the outward intention behind that, is you want clients, and networking is a great way. It's a wonderful way, whether you do it virtually or in person, and to be able to figure out if this is that right fit client. But what I see a lot is we go through the friendship part and we stay there. We don't take all of the relationships to the different nuances to see where we want to sit with them. And especially with women entrepreneurs, we sit in that girlfriend method and we don't eventually take it to a point where this could be a great client, or maybe you are even a great client for them. And so that's why a lot of people say networking doesn't work. Networking works in the right way if you have the right intention when you go in to a networking event in person or virtually. You could have a simple one as I want to meet 2 or 3 new people. I want to be able to have 2 conversations, 2 out of 3 with them outside of the networking event. It's really hard to have a deep conversation with someone at a networking event. It's usually like the first get to know you. It's not even a date yet. And then you give business cards and then it stops. And so we want to continue those conversations to see where these folks land. Should you continue and start branching off, that your conversations should be about them working with you, or should they be colleagues and maybe you'll refer to each other, or are they just a great entrepreneurial friend and they would love to support you and you would love to support them? That's what I mean about that. 90% of the time, people stop at the first connection and first conversation and don't take it any further, and they get caught up in their business and they're too busy. So relationship building is not only natural, but there is some strategy to it, because if you're meeting all these people, it's great to know where they fit so you can further the relationship in the right arena. So that's what's really important there. And then it's so the big hot button is, how do I develop relationships when I'm doing my sales and marketing? Because there's confusion there. When you come to a conversation that is not specifically laid out as checking out to see whether they should work with you or not, it is a general relationship building. If they want to know more about you and what you do, then you get to do the next step, the next connection piece around explaining how you get great results for your clients. And they will let you know if it didn't start out as a sales call, but it turns into a sales call naturally, then that's fantastic. What happens is we come to a conversation that is doesn't have an agenda for a sales call, but we turn it into a sales call because that's our intention, and the other person doesn't feel good about that. So it's really important for you to have some nuances and know where you're going, what the intention is each and every single time you're having a conversation, whether that's on Zoom, on the phone, text messages, DMs, it doesn't matter. The thing I said about earlier around technology, and I say it a lot, the more technology we have, the more we use, the more we have to be in relationships with other folks. And, it's something that you should be doing every single week in several areas, just having regular conversations that are connection, sales conversations that further the relationship, and colleague conversations. And if you don't have all 3 going on, you're not really believing that relationships are a huge part of business building. So think about what you're doing. And if you're falling down on any of those areas, then you need to really rethink how you're using relationships in your business, of course, from an authentic point of view. It's got to be from an authentic point of view. Now, the thing I'll tell you about relationships, no matter if it's to build your relationship with your colleague, to build your relationship with friends, to build relationships around sales and marketing, that here's the first rule of thumb. You go first every single time. You go first, you go first. It's up to you to reach out first. There's no waiting in relationship building unless that was the consensus after your first conversation. So it's about connection, it's about conversation. And if it's a sales call, it's converting to a new client. If it's not a sales call, it's just converting. I'll use that language just to give you a literal sense, to the next step, not to the end step. Okay, that's a big mistake in relationship building, is to try to go to the end step when the next piece of any relationship building in business is the next step, not the end step, not the end intention, the next step of the intention. I've said this before, and when I trained, when I had my psychotherapy business and I trained other therapists, it's a mistake that therapists make, coaches make all the time. You meet someone, you know you can help them, and you've already seen the results you can get them. You're at the end step. I mean, really, they're only at the next step. And you have to pace yourself with them to be at the next step with them, depending what the nuances are of the conversation. It's never the end result unless you are in a sales conversation. That is different. And even sales conversations are relationship building. The intention is different, and you're both on the same page with that intention. Relationships get messed up when the intention, when they have an intention for is not a sales call, and you have an intention for a sales call, and you guys are not meeting, and you're passing like two ships in the night, not knowing, and that person feels empty from the call, and you feel frustrated from the call. So one of the things, and which leads me to the second piece of 2 principles of relationships when it comes to business, is never let the situation mean more than the person that you're building that relationship with. Now, when I say that to clients, and when I talk about that, when I'm speaking about this, a lot of people think what I'm saying is don't sell. I'm not saying that at all. And since I teach selling and psychology of selling and marketing and the strategy around building your business and then around your psychology, what it means is relationships come first, but if you have the right intention, no one is messing that up. And so you can continue with a sales call if you know that's a sales call and they know that's a sales call, or in the middle of getting just to know someone, they verbatim come out and tell you, I really want to know what you do. I'm wondering if you can help me. Then you get to switch. But the nuances of doing that is what gets people in trouble, because they think every conversation is a sales call. It's not if the intention of both of you is not the same. And that's when people get that yucky feel around sales, that you're always selling. Excuse me, I was kind of falling off my seat here for a second. Because you're coming in here, they're coming in here, and then they feel like, that just didn't feel right. And so let me repeat the 2 again, because I think they're important. They're simple, but they're not done well. Really, they're not done well personally, and they're not done well professionally. Because I'll tell you in a minute what that is. You go first, and never let the situation mean more than the relationship. And when it comes to sales, this has a big meaning, because a lot of people interpret that as going, oh, you don't sell. That's not true. Sales is service. Sales is conversation. But the relationship piece is if they're not ready to buy from you. So let's stick with it's a sales conversation. And the situation, what that means is you can't care more about getting them as a client than they care about coming on. That's what I mean. If you are extended is not the right word, over wanting that sale at the expense of getting to know that person's needs more, so you can really be in true service of someone with your conversation, then you have violated principle number 2, which is never let the situation mean more than the relationship. And, that's why when we are networking and we're getting to know people and we're coming in with the intention of selling right away, that's when you make the situation mean more than the relationship. And it's an uneven conversation. Their intentions are different than yours. But it's different if someone says to you in a networking event. I mean, this has happened to me at conferences. Lots of times people are on my list for a long time because I do write a blog. I now have a podcast. People get to know me that way, and I don't even know it. And then we see each other or we're on a Zoom call in some format about how we got there. It doesn't matter. And they go, oh, I have been wanting to talk to you. I'm not sure if you can help me. What is that? They are letting you know. I had someone actually respond to my blog a few weeks ago, and they said, I really needed to hear this. I've been reading your stuff for 5 years. I couldn't believe she said that. I thought she'd been reading about a year, but she told me 5 years. And she goes, I just really knew I wanted to work with you. The timing just never seemed to be right. But I feel right now the timing is right for a conversation about working together. So that, I was in a conversation, I was in a relationship with her through my campaigns of sending emails and blogs, and she'd been reading them all these years. And so it was a relationship of marketing. Then it was a conversation of maybe, let's see if this would work now or when it would work when. And it turned out to be when it would work when, meaning that our relationship continues, her reading, and I'm aware when I'm going to follow up with her, when she wants to do this work with me. And that lets you know, that's the nuances. If I had spoken to her and overrode to the end of you're my client with that kind of energy, people they don't respond to that. And it's more and more happening nowadays. Now, that doesn't mean you don't do some type of nurturing the relationship piece every single day in your business, Monday through Friday. That's a big piece I want my clients to do. I want them doing something, reaching out. You go first, whether it's an email to their list, whether it's an invitation on social media, whether it's a direct message, whatever the invitation is, you go first. They get to choose, right? And then from those, you build the relationship depending on the context. I had someone reach out to me actually right before I got on. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can refer to each other. I know the intention. So that's the intention I'm going in. It doesn't mean it could turn into something else for all I know. Had a conversation with someone several months ago. I actually saw a LinkedIn post and I said, wow, this is different. There's part of this that intrigues me. I'm going to respond. I sent a message and that person responded to me. And now we're in a partnership for something that will come out in the fall that I didn't even have on my radar. So, that's the nuances of relationship. And it's the fun part of relationships because you never know where it's going to go. So again, you go first and never let the situation mean more than the relationship because people will know it. The intention is the most important piece when you are building relationships in business. So let's just do some practical things right now so that you can take some of what I'm saying and actually do some work between now and tomorrow when we meet again. If you would review your current relationships, just put clients, people you would like to work with. I'm going to give you a couple of columns because this happens a lot when I'm working with my clients. So it's not only your current clients, it's your past clients, it's your top 20 people you want to work with. If you don't have a top 10 or a top 20 of people you want to work with, then you need to create that and stick it somewhere you see every single day. Or the type of client. It's more than just your avatar or your right fit client. I actually have people's names that I would love to work with on my list. And usually a few of them come off the list and are clients because the intention is there. So I have a top 20. If you just want to start with a top 10, I think that'd be really good. I keep a constant top 20. So clients, past clients, top 20 that you folks you want to work with, maybe some people that are well known out there that you would like to have more than just watching them from afar, you want a relationship with. And then colleagues, partnerships, anything that fits with your business, make a list and have at least 10 to 20 people in each. And then I want you to look at what are the commonalities about them that you really enjoy. Because what's that going to do? It's going to define the type of people you really love to work with, you love to be a colleague of, a partner with. You're going to know the nuances of your columns. And so when we go further through the week, when we meet Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 12 noon here Central Time on Instagram or on Zoom, get an itch, excuse me, then you're going to be able to move forward with some intention, because each of those columns have different intentions, they're different nuances. And it's really the nuances in relationships that make you really good at it. It's not the overarching theme of relationships because everyone says it. I haven't been to a sales training in 20 years that didn't say building relationships is key. But what I have found over the years, being a psychotherapist, working with folks around their relationships with their spouses, their children, and then the consulting piece I had working with leaders so they could have relationships with those that worked for them and for them to have better relationships with their bosses. It's the nuances, it's the language. There's so much of that is what you need to train yourself on. It's not hard, you just have to remember. So I do a lot of practical things for my clients and helping them figure out what kind of relationships they want. Like for me, I'll give you an example about potential clients. I want my top 20 and anybody else that I attract, I want them to be magnetized towards me. Why? Because I want them to come to me, not literally, but what I put out there, that it's important. They love reading it. They love seeing it on social media. They think about the possibility of working with me. So that's the nurturing marketing relationship that I want. It's the traction piece that's important. I want my clients to know, like I'm giving you the one thing. There are several things in each column, but like for clients, I want them to know not only can I get them results because I know I have over and over again, but to know that I have their back. And even after they stayed with me a year, 2 years, 3 years, that they can come back to me. And anytime if they want to work with me, but even to send me an email that says, hey, Lorianne, I think I'm going to move forward with this. I just love your opinion on it because I'm just not sure. And I value our relationship when I was your client. That's the kind of stuff I know when I get that back, I have done a good job about relationships because the relationships are important to me. Now, the flip side of relationships is, we'll talk about this, I think it's Wednesday, relationships that are not working for you, that you've got to let go of, relationships that you are avoiding because there needs to be some mending. Even in a business situation, those things happen because we learn our relationship building skills, good or bad, when we're tiny. When we come out of the womb and we start screaming to have our diapers changed and to be fed and to be loved and to be nurtured, and some of us get to be in great families, some of us get to be in horrible families, some of us get to be in so-so families, but we learn it all there. And if you don't think you take this to the workplace, you're fooling yourself, and to your business. So I'm really not talking a lot about your relationship to your business, but all these ideas do go with that. But I want you to know that relationships are mostly positive, optimistic, inspiring. I want all that for my relationships. And maybe inspiration is not for a certain group, and it's more magnetizing, like I said. Maybe with my clients, it's more about not only getting their results, but knowing I can inspire them, that they can do it even when they're at one point in time, several times, they are feeling like they need to give up. So relationships are key in so many areas. People think they do them well. I'm here to tell you they don't. I have, doesn't matter where it happens. Of course, being a psychotherapist for almost 17 years opened my eyes to that. And at first I worked with Children's Protective Services when I got out of graduate school. So I was in a population that was more chaotic. And then I opened my private practice in my home town right now, and where I'm living, and it has one of the best school districts in the state, and people mess up their relationships here too. It's just not publicized as much, and so and entrepreneurs do it also. And actually, sometimes, depending on the circumstances, entrepreneurs do it worse. They don't mean to. So people think that because they grew up having friends in school and have spouses and have girlfriends and have guys they hang out with, and it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a gal, is that they think they know how. And some people just have that knack, but most people, it's kind of surface, and it doesn't go deep enough to really sustain relationships. If you've got a best friend, you already know what to do. But in the workplace, in the entrepreneurial space, there are key people that actually that are very successful, and they have done it all on relationships, and they have done a fabulous job. And they use all the skills that I'm going to talk to you about this week, and they use them every single day. And most of the time, when I talk to people about this, even if they're not my client, the too busy piece comes in every single time. Put it in your calendar for you to check in with a former client every 2 months or so. Just send a message or a text that said, "Hey, just check in. How you doing?" Because most of the time when I do that, they call me back. And they actually want to talk. And even though they may not be my client again, ever, or maybe it'll be a year from now, or when the next thing comes up, it doesn't matter. It's about the deepness of how you use those nuances that I'm going to teach you through the week. That is so important. And don't fool yourself, you really know it. Because if you were building and sustaining great relationships as an entrepreneur, you would have more relationships, and in turn, your business would be much bigger than what it is now. And we are also going to talk about relationship and team building a little bit, because once you get to a certain spot in your business, you start having to build team, whether that's a part-time person or a whole team. Eventually you've got full-time employees. I won't spend a whole lot of time because it's actually a whole training by itself, but just to show you, no matter where the relationship is, whether it's a client or your audience, or it's the marketing relationship, or it's a colleague relationship, or a referral relationship, or it's someone that you really want to get to know that's much further along than you, what those skills are and how you can benefit them and grow some really roots into the relationship building skills, because it's really the roots that sustain relationships. It's not all the stuff on the surface, it's the roots. Thank you for coming. Monday here, the day after Mother's Day, relationships with your mom. That's interesting too. Some people get great moms. Again, it's just human nature. It doesn't matter. But they're inspired. Relationships should be inspiring, optimistic, positive. And when they're not, what are the skills to get them there? If this relationship should be still coming in for you, or is it a relationship you need to let go? And sometimes they're painful to let go of, but you just absolutely know that you have to do it. I think I'll end with this story. So I had a friend for 25 years, started off as a client. I was her client short-term 25 years ago. We then developed a relationship after I stopped being a client, and she did a little bit of work with me, but not that much. And I knew this about her from day one. She's not the most positive person in the world. Everything can be a problem. And I loved her through all of that. But there came a point in my life when I had to look at myself and ask, why was I sustaining this relationship? Because it never got better. And I couldn't, as I went along, I just couldn't handle it anymore. So after 25 years, I just slowly pulled back, and she just went away because I was the one sustaining it, but I was sustaining it over her negativity and trying to be helpful. And that's what friends are for. And all that good stuff. And even though I still love her and I hear about her, and when good things happen to her, I'm excited for her, but I just could not sustain that negativity anymore. And I gave it years where I shouldn't have given it. But sometimes we learn lessons the hard way, and relationships are a great place to learn lessons in business and in life. So the thing I'll say to you about relationships, when you're looking at your list and you're making your list that I asked you to do, think about all the pieces also that you do that makes you a good friend, you a good client, you a good practitioner of whatever you do, you a good colleague, you a good referral partner. And so let's start building that list also. All right. So have a wonderful day on your Monday, and I will see you Tuesday. Well, we'll talk about the framework on sustainability in relationships. Bye for now.